On Father's Day morning, my father sent a spreadsheet to our family group chat, 3 generations watching. The final line read $177,453.28, cost of raising an unwanted child. That child was me.
I didn't know that yet when Hazel buckled her seatbelt and started humming, soft and focused, the way she always did before practice. She had a new passage she wanted to try, something her great-grandmother had shown her the week before, and she kept tapping the rhythm against her knee like she was afraid it might slip away if she stopped. The violin wasn't in the car. It never was. It stayed at my parents' house, in the old music room that had belonged to Dorothy for as long as I could remember. Temperature controlled. Locked cabinet. Treated like something that mattered. Hazel leaned her head back against the seat. "Do you think Great-Grandma will listen today?" she asked. "I'm sure she will," I said, because at the time I still believed nothing had been taken. Cedar Ridge looked the same as always when we pulled up. Trim lawns, quiet street. But the moment I opened the front door, something felt wrong. The smell hit first. Fresh paint. Sawdust. That sharp chemical edge that meant money had been spent without conversation. Somewhere deeper in the house, power tools whined, high and constant. Hazel's face lit up. "Are they fixing the music room?" I didn't answer. My brain was busy catching up to my instincts. We walked down the hall together, past plastic tarps taped neatly along the floor and stacks of flattened cardboard leaning against the wall. The music room door stood open. The humidifier hummed softly, doing its job. The shelves of sheet music were still perfectly aligned. The stand was there. The corner where the violin case should have been was empty. Hazel stopped so abruptly I nearly bumped into her. She stared at the floor, then at the stand, then behind the chair as if the instrument might have slipped out of sight on its own. "Maybe they moved it," she said, hopeful, helpful. I felt my throat tighten. "Let me check," I told her. "Wait here." I left her standing in the doorway because I needed distance before my face betrayed me. The kitchen was loud in that intentional way, voices overlapping, mugs clinking, normal life being performed on purpose. My father sat at the table scrolling through his phone. My mother stood by the counter, coffee in hand. Monica laughed at something on her screen. "Where's Hazel's violin?" I asked. My mother glanced up. "Good morning, Natalie." "Where is it?" I repeated. My father sighed, already tired of the inconvenience. "We handled it." Handled. The word landed wrong. Handled how? He didn't even look up. "We sold it. It was just sitting there." The room went quiet, like the house itself wanted to listen. "You sold it?" I said. Monica snorted. "She's a kid." "That violin wasn't yours," I said. "Dorothy set it aside for Hazel." My mother set her mug down carefully. "It was a family asset." "No," I said. "It wasn't. We needed the space," my father added. "And the money made sense." "For what?" I asked, though I already knew. Monica turned her phone toward me, smiling. The screen showed a rendering of a backyard. Bright colors, slides, padded flooring. "For the kids," she said. I thought of Hazel standing in the doorway, staring at an empty corner. "Don't tell Dorothy," my mother said quickly. "She doesn't need stress." I walked out without answering. Hazel looked up at me as I approached. She searched my face with careful eyes. "We're going home," I said. She nodded without arguing. That hurt more than if she had cried. That night, Hazel practiced on a borrowed violin her teacher had lent her for emergencies. The sound was thin, reluctant. She adjusted her posture, tried again, and blinked hard when it still wasn't right. "I can still practice," she said quickly. "It's just harder." I stood in the doorway and watched her do what she always did. Adapt, accommodate, make herself smaller so no one else would have to be uncomfortable. After she went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table and stared at my phone. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Don't tell Dorothy." That was when I understood something I should have learned years earlier. They weren't asking me to protect her. They were asking me to protect themselves. And I wasn't going to do it anymore. Hazel didn't ask about the violin the next morning. That scared me more than if she had. She ate her cereal quietly, reading the back of the box like it held instructions for how to behave when something important vanished. When I asked if she wanted to practice before school, she shook her head. Later, she said, after homework. Later had become her shield. I drove her to school in silence, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Every red light felt personal. Every billboard advertising something bright and unnecessary made my jaw clench. When Hazel got out of the car, she paused, leaned back in, and kissed my cheek. "It's okay, Mom," she said, too practiced. "I know you didn't do it." I watched her walk away, backpack bouncing, shoulders already carrying weight they shouldn't have known yet. The first thing I did after work was call my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. Straight to voicemail. By the time Monica finally picked up, my voice was shaking. "You sold Hazel's violin," I said. "Relax," she replied. "It's done." "Done doesn't mean right. It was just sitting there," she said again, like repetition could turn theft into logic. "And my kids needed somewhere to play. You know how tight things are." "Tight," I repeated. "You're building a playground." There was a pause. "Why are you making this a big deal?" I thought of Hazel's fingers hovering over an empty stand. "Because it was never yours." Monica exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." That night, Hazel tried to practice. She lasted 10 minutes before setting the borrowed violin down and staring at her hands. "It doesn't sound like me," she said. I sat beside her. "It's not your fault." She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the floor. "Maybe I wasn't ready for something that nice." The sentence landed like a bruise. "Hazel," I said, gently lifting her chin, "you don't earn permission to have what was promised to you." She didn't argue. She just leaned into me, small and quiet, and I held her until her breathing evened out. The next day, photos appeared online. Monica's feed filled with progress shots, wood framing, bright colors, captions about making memories and worth every penny. My parents liked every post, commented with hearts. Neighbors chimed in with congratulations. I felt sick. Hazel saw one of the photos over my shoulder and went still. "That's from my violin?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She swallowed. "It looks fun." I closed the app. That evening, my father finally called. "You need to calm down," he said, not bothering with hello. "This doesn't have to be a whole thing." "It already is," I replied. "Your mother's worried," he continued, "about Dorothy, about stress." "You're worried about being caught," I said. Silence crackled on the line. Then softer. "It was valuable. It made sense." "For who?" I asked. "For the family." Hazel coughed from the hallway. I covered the phone. She looked at me, eyes wide, then turned away, retreating to her room. "She heard you," I said into the phone. "She hears everything." "You're overreacting," my father said, voice hardening. "Kids bounce back." I hung up. That night, Hazel didn't practice at all. She did her homework carefully, methodically, like good behavior might reverse time. When I tucked her in, she asked, "Do you think Great-Grandma is mad at me?" "No," I said immediately. "Never." "Then why didn't she stop them?" The question cut deep because I didn't know the answer yet. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "people do things quietly so they can fix them properly." She considered that. "Quiet doesn't always mean weak," she said, echoing something Dorothy had once told her. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." After she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her chest rise and fall, thinking about the years I'd spent swallowing discomfort to keep peace. I thought about my mother's warning, "Don't tell Dorothy," and how it wasn't concern at all. It was strategy. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I packed Hazel's lunch, kissed her goodbye, and drove not to work, but across town, to Maple Glen residence. My hands were steady on the wheel now. The decision had settled. Dorothy deserved the truth. And Hazel deserved to see what happened when someone finally spoke it. Maple Glen residence smelled like lemon cleaner and quiet rules. The kind of place that promised safety by removing friction, by smoothing everything sharp until no one could cut themselves, or reach for anything either. I signed in at the desk, accepted a polite smile, and followed the hallway to the sunlit lounge at the end. Dorothy sat in her usual chair with a book open on her lap, and her glasses perched low on her nose, as if she'd paused mid-judgment. She looked up the second she saw me. "Sit," she said. "Your face is doing that thing." I sat. For a moment, I didn't speak. I watched the way the light landed on her hands, the same hands that had corrected Hazel's grip with 2 fingers and a look. The same hands that had locked the cabinet and filed the papers and warned me, years ago, that people got strange around valuable things. "They sold it," I said finally. Dorothy didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or reach for water or ask me to repeat myself. She simply closed the book and set it aside, deliberate and calm. "Who?" she asked. "My parents," I said. "And Monica knew." "How much?" "92,000. Dorothy nodded once. "And Hazel?" "She thinks she did something wrong. That did it. Not a breakdown. Clarity." Dorothy's expression sharpened the way steel does when you stop mistaking it for softness. "When did you last see the file?" she asked. "The appraisal?" I said. "A few months ago." "You showed me." "Good," she said. "Then you know what it is." I swallowed. "A trust." "Yes," she said. "And not a secret one. A quiet one." She leaned forward. "I set that violin aside for Hazel because talent without protection is a gamble, and I don't gamble with children." I exhaled, slow. "They told me not to tell you." Dorothy smiled, not kindly. "Of course they did." She stood, steady on her feet, and reached for her bag. "We'll need a few things," she said. "Photos of the construction. Any messages about the sale? Dates? Times?" "I can get those," I said. "Monica posted everything." Dorothy's smile returned, smaller this time. People do love documenting their confidence. We sat together while I pulled screenshots and sent them to her. She scanned each one, efficient and thorough, collecting a story the way she'd taught Hazel to collect notes. Cleanly, in order, without panic. "Are you okay?" I asked when we finished. Dorothy looked at me over her glasses. "I'm not the one who should be worried." She made a call then, voice low, precise. I didn't ask who she spoke to. I recognized the tone. It was the same one she used when she negotiated contracts, when she corrected orchestras that tried to cut corners, when she decided something was done being tolerated. When she hung up, she placed her hand over mine. "This will take a little time," she said. "Not long, but not loud. You'll need patience." "I have that," I said, surprising myself. "Good," she said, "because the waiting is where people show who they are." That night, Hazel practiced on the borrowed violin again. The sound still wasn't right, but she stayed with it longer. I watched from the doorway, remembering the way Dorothy had said quiet doesn't mean weak, and realizing how much Hazel had absorbed without ever being taught directly. A few days passed, then a week. Monica's posts slowed, then stopped. My parents didn't call. The silence pressed in, uncomfortable and revealing. Hazel asked fewer questions. She focused on school, on practice, on keeping herself busy like movement might hold things together. On Friday, Dorothy called me. "We're going to the party," she said. "What party?" "The unveiling," she replied. "Backyard, balloons, applause." I pictured the renderings Monica had shown me, bright colors, slides, smiles that expected agreement. "Hazel doesn't have to come," I said. "She should," Dorothy replied gently. "Not to confront, to witness." There was a pause. "Bring the old rose in," Dorothy added. "The one in the tin." I found it in Hazel's case that night, tucked into the pocket like a talisman. When I handed it to her, she smiled faintly. "That's great-grandma's," she said. "Yes," I replied, "and you'll want it with you." On Saturday morning, Hazel dressed carefully, pulling on her sweater even though it was warm. She wrapped the rosin tin in a tissue and slipped it into her pocket. "Mom?" she asked just before we left. "Yes. If something happens," she said, choosing her words. "Do I have to say anything?" "No," I said. "You don't have to say a word." She nodded, relieved. As we pulled onto the street, I felt it. The sense that the quiet had done its work, that the pieces were in motion now. Some stories change when people shout. Others change when someone finally listens long enough to act. If you've ever stayed with a story because you felt it turning, you know the moment. This was ours. The day of the party arrived wrapped in forced cheer. Sunlight bounced off freshly painted fences and the new rubber flooring in the backyard, bright enough to hurt your eyes if you stared too long. Hazel noticed everything in silence as we walked in. Every banner, every balloon, every carefully arranged detail that said celebration without ever asking for whom. Children ran past us, shrieking with joy. Evan climbed the new slide like he'd been waiting his whole life for it. Chloe squealed as she bounced on the padded surface, her laughter loud and unrestrained. Monica hovered nearby, drink in hand, soaking in compliments from neighbors who didn't know what they were applauding. My mother spotted us and smiled, the public one she wore like armor. "You made it," she said, as if we were late to something we owed her. Hazel stood close to my side, fingers curled tight around the pocket of her sweater where the old rosin tin rested. Her eyes drifted across the yard, then back to the ground. I watched her swallow, watched her shoulders tense, and felt a quiet fury settle into my chest. My father clapped his hands together. "Everyone, gather around. We just want to say how grateful we are to finally have a space like this for the kids." Applause followed. Monica raised her glass. "To family," she said brightly. Hazel flinched at the word. "Where's Dorothy?" someone asked. My mother's smile faltered for half a second. "She couldn't make it," she said quickly. Right on cue, the gate clicked open. Dorothy walked in with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly where she stood. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, nothing flashy, nothing apologetic. Beside her was a man in a gray suit carrying a slim leather folder. Conversation slowed, then stopped. "Well," Dorothy said pleasantly, surveying the yard, "you've been busy." My mother laughed too loud. "Mom, this is a party." "I know," Dorothy replied. "That's why I came." Her eyes found Hazel. For a brief moment, they softened. Hazel straightened, like her spine recognized safety before her mind could catch up. Dorothy turned back to the group. "I won't take long," she said. "I know everyone's eager to enjoy the new space." My father cleared his throat. "Let's talk privately." Dorothy smiled, thin and controlled. "You've had plenty of private time." The man beside her stepped forward, opening the folder. Papers rustled in the sudden quiet. "The violin," Dorothy said evenly, "was held in trust for Hazel. I am the trustee. She is the beneficiary." My mother blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I documented the instrument," Dorothy continued. "Appraisal, serial number, insurance. Because I've lived long enough to know that people behave differently around valuable things." A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. "You sold something you did not own," Dorothy said. "And you used the money to build this," Monica scoffed. "It's for the kids." Dorothy's gaze snapped to her. "Hazel is a child." Silence followed, sharp and unmistakable. The man in the suit spoke calmly. "The instrument was recovered this morning. The buyer has been notified." Hazel gasped softly. I felt her fingers clutch my sleeve. "And these," he added, holding out the papers, "are notices to vacate. 60 days. My mother took a step back. "You can't do this." Dorothy tilted her head. "I already have." People began to drift away, murmuring excuses, suddenly remembering appointments and obligations. The celebration dissolved without ceremony. Evan and Chloe kept playing for a moment longer, unaware, until Monica snapped at them to come inside. Hazel tugged on my hand. "Do I get it back?" she whispered. Dorothy knelt in front of her, eyes level. Yes, she said. And you never lost it. Hazel exhaled a breath I didn't realize she'd been holding for weeks. As we walked back to the car, the yard behind us fell quiet. The bright colors looked different now. Less triumphant, more hollow. Hazel looked up at me. I didn't have to say anything, she said. No, I replied. You didn't. She nodded, thoughtful. But they still heard. I glanced back once at the playground built from something stolen and understood what Dorothy had meant all along. Silence wasn't weakness, it was preparation. The violin came home on Monday. A delivery truck pulled up just after lunch, unmarked and quiet, like it didn't want to draw attention to itself. Hazel heard it before I did. She froze in the hallway, eyes wide, then looked at me as if she were afraid to hope. "Mom?" she asked. I opened the door with my heart in my throat. The case was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe my hands were just aware now of what it carried. I signed, thanked the driver, and set it gently on the living room floor. Hazel didn't rush. She knelt beside the case, fingers hovering over the latches, breathing slow and careful. "Together?" I asked. She nodded. When the case opened, the smell of old wood and polish filled the room, familiar and grounding. Hazel touched the edge first, then the neck, like she was making sure it was real. Her shoulders dropped. Not all the way, just enough. "It looks the same," she whispered. "It is the same," I said. "It always was." She didn't cry. She smiled. Small, contained. The kind of smile you wear when you don't want to scare something fragile away. Then she lifted the violin and tucked it under her chin, bow resting lightly on the strings. The first note rang out full and warm, filling the room with a sound that had been missing for too long. Hazel stopped after a single phrase and laughed, surprised by herself. "It sounds like me," she said. Dorothy arrived later that afternoon, carrying a paper bag and that steady calm that made everything else slow down. She listened from the doorway while Hazel played, eyes closed, hands folded. When Hazel finished, Dorothy stepped forward. "You didn't lose a thing," she said. "They just borrowed your silence." Hazel frowned. "Why would they want that?" Dorothy smiled sadly. "Because silence makes it easier to pretend." Across town, pretending had stopped working. My parents called that evening, not together, separately. My father first, voice tight, clipped. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" I asked. "About what happens next." "What happens next," I replied, "is that Hazel practices." He hung up. My mother left a voicemail. She sounded tired, smaller. "We never meant to hurt her," she said. "We just didn't think." I deleted it. Monica tried a different approach. She showed up unannounced 2 days later, sunglasses on, jaw set. Hazel was in the living room, practicing scales, when the knock came. "I'll handle it," I said. Monica crossed her arms. "You didn't have to humiliate us." "You humiliated yourselves," I replied. "It was for the kids," she insisted. "For your kids," I said. "Hazel is a kid." She looked past me, eyes landing on the violin. Something flickered. Envy, regret, calculation. "She got it back," Monica said. "Isn't that enough?" "No," I said. "Enough would have been not taking it." Monica laughed, sharp and defensive. "You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I had to." She left without another word. That night, Hazel practiced longer than usual. Not because she felt she had to make up for lost time, but because she wanted to. She stopped when her hands grew tired, set the violin down gently, and stretched her fingers. "Mom?" she asked. "Yes. Am I allowed to be happy about this?" she said. "Even though everything's messy?" I sat beside her. "You're allowed to be happy because of this," I said. "Not despite it." She considered that, then nodded. A letter arrived the next morning addressed to Dorothy. She opened it at the kitchen table, glasses low on her nose. "They've found a place," she said. "Temporary." "And the house?" I asked. Dorothy folded the letter. "It will be quiet again." Hazel looked up from her homework. "Quiet like before?" Dorothy smiled at her. Better, she said. Quiet with purpose. That weekend, Hazel's teacher called. She sounds different, she said. More certain. Hazel overheard and grinned, unapologetic. Later, as the sun dipped low and the house settled around us, Hazel played a piece Dorothy had taught her years ago. Not perfectly, honestly. The sound filled the space and stayed there, unchallenged. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't getting the violin back. It was teaching Hazel, and myself, that we didn't have to give anything up to keep the peace. And we weren't going to anymore. The house felt different once the violin was back. Not louder, just settled, like the walls had stopped bracing themselves. Hazel practiced in the afternoons now, door open, sunlight moving across the floor as if it wanted to listen. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize to the air. She played, stopped, corrected, and played again, patient with herself in a way that still startled me. The 60 days began to count down. My parents packed slowly, as if time might soften the math if they treated it gently. Boxes appeared in corners of the house like quiet confessions. Drawers stayed half full. Lamps vanished and then reappeared. Indecision disguised as organization. Monica stopped coming by altogether. The playground sat unused, bright and strange, a thing built for applause that no longer arrived, Hazel noticed. Why don't the kids play on it? She asked one evening. I considered the question. Sometimes, I said. People don't like reminders. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her scales. A week later, Dorothy slid a folder across the kitchen table. Not legal papers this time. Notes, lists, names. I've been thinking ahead, she said. Protection works best when it doesn't have to announce itself. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she replied, we prepare quietly. She explained the plan in simple terms. The house would be placed into a new trust. Hazel's future expenses, lessons, programs, instruments, would be covered without negotiation or permission. My role would change too. Less asking, more deciding. Hazel listened from the doorway, pretending not to. When Dorothy finished, she spoke up. Does that mean they can't take things anymore? Dorothy smiled. It means they won't get the chance. Hazel thought about that, then said, I like that. School resumed its rhythm. Hazel's teacher called to say the regional youth orchestra auditions were opening early this year. Hazel listened quietly as I relayed the information, then surprised me. I want to try, she said. You don't have to, I replied. I know, she said. I still want to. Preparation took over our evenings. New repertoire, long tones, metronome clicks that felt like heartbeats. Hazel worked hard but stopped before exhaustion tipped into punishment. When she missed a passage, she didn't flinch. She marked it and moved on. One night she paused mid-practice. Mom, yes, if I don't get in, she said carefully, will you still be proud? I crossed the room and sat beside her. I already am, I said. Auditions don't change that. She nodded, relief softening her shoulders, and lifted the violin again. The invitation to the final walkthrough arrived in the family group chat without commentary. Saturday, noon. Just to get things, my mother wrote. No apology, no explanation. Dorothy read the message and set her phone down. We won't be there, she said. I hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, she said calmly. Closure doesn't require witnesses. Hazel exhaled, grateful. On audition day, the hall smelled like rosin and nerves. Hazel carried her violin with both hands, posture steady, eyes forward. She didn't look for me when her number was called. She walked onto the stage and took her place as if she belonged there, which, I realized, she did. The first note rang out clean and confident. Hazel played as if she were explaining something important, not asking for approval. When she finished, she bowed once and walked off, face flushed, breathing even. How do you feel? I asked afterward. Like I told the truth, she said. We didn't celebrate loudly. We got ice cream. We walked home. Hazel practiced lightly that evening, then stopped on her own. A message came in late that night. My father. Again. Short this time. We're leaving next week. I read it twice, then set the phone down without replying. Dorothy watched me. You don't have to answer everything, she said. Some things end whether we comment or not. I looked at Hazel, curled on the couch with her music spread around her like a map she was learning to read. The house hummed softly, content. Sometimes stories change because of one loud moment. Others change because people stay, listen, and choose what happens next. If you've stayed with this one, you already know which kind lasts. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, folded once and slid under the door like it didn't want to be noticed. Hazel spotted it before I did. It's from the orchestra, she said, voice careful. We sat at the kitchen table together. Dorothy stood by the window, hands clasped behind her back, pretending not to watch. I opened the envelope and read it once, then again, just to be sure. Hazel had been accepted, not waitlisted, not encouraged. Accepted. Assigned a seat, with a note about strong tone and mature phrasing. Hazel read the page in silence, lips moving slightly, like the words might change if she didn't hold them still. I did it, she said. You did, Dorothy replied, turning from the window with a smile that reached her eyes. Hazel laughed then, a sudden bright sound that startled all three of us. She hugged me first, then Dorothy, and for a moment the house felt too small for the relief that filled it. The news traveled faster than I expected. A congratulatory email from her teacher, a quiet nod from the school counselor, and then, inevitably, a message from my father. I heard about Hazel, congratulations. It was the first time he'd used her name since everything happened. I showed Dorothy. She read it, folded the phone closed, and handed it back. You don't owe him a response, she said. I know, I replied. But you're thinking about it. I am. Then think about Hazel first. That night, Hazel practiced later than usual. The new music spread across the stand. It was harder than anything she'd played before. Fast passages, exposed lines that left nowhere to hide. She missed a shift, frowned, marked the spot, and tried again. I don't want to mess this up, she said. I sat beside her. What does messing up look like? She thought for a moment. Being afraid to try. Then you're already doing it right, I said. Across town, the house emptied. My parents moved out quietly, boxes loaded without ceremony. Monica didn't help. She didn't call. The playground stayed bright and untouched, a finished sentence no one wanted to read aloud. My mother came by once, unannounced, while Hazel was at rehearsal. Dorothy opened the door. I just want to see her, my mother said, eyes flicking past Dorothy like she expected Hazel to appear on cue. Why? Dorothy asked, not unkindly. To say congratulations. Dorothy held the door frame. Say it when you're ready to say everything else. My mother's mouth tightened. She nodded once and left. When Hazel got home, I told her what happened. She listened, then shrugged. I'm okay with waiting, she said. I don't feel rushed anymore. That felt like a victory we hadn't named yet. The first orchestra rehearsal was downtown, in a hall that smelled like old wood and anticipation. Hazel carried her violin with confidence now, adjusting her chair and tuning without fuss. She sat among older students and didn't shrink. When the conductor raised his baton, the sound that followed was messy and thrilling and alive. Hazel played, listening and adjusting, part of something larger without disappearing inside it. Afterward, she found me in the lobby, cheeks flushed. It was loud, she said. I liked that. On the walk home, she asked, Do you think it's okay that I don't miss them? Yes, I said. Missing isn't required. She nodded, relieved. That night, Dorothy set the house alarm and paused. Peace doesn't mean everyone agrees, she said. It means the right people are safe. Hazel placed her violin in its corner, gentle and sure. The house hummed quietly around us, no longer holding its breath. Stories don't always change with a single speech. Sometimes they change because someone stays long enough to hear what happens next and decides it's worth following all the way through. The orchestra schedule took over our calendar without asking permission. Rehearsals on weekday evenings, sectionals on Saturdays, a concert circled in red at the end of the month, like a promise no one dared to say out loud yet. Hazel taped the schedule to the fridge herself, smoothing the corners flat. "So we don't forget," she said. As if we could. She practiced differently now. Not longer. Cleaner. She broke passages down until they made sense, then stitched them back together with a patience that felt learned, not forced. When she stumbled, she didn't flinch. She marked the spot, took a breath, and tried again. Watching her felt like witnessing a quiet revolution. One evening, after a particularly focused session, Hazel lowered her bow and looked at me. "Do you ever think about how close I was to quitting?" The question caught me off guard. "Quitting what?" "Music," she said. "Not because I wanted to, because it felt like it didn't want me." I sat beside her on the bench. "What changed?" She shrugged, thinking. Someone said out loud that it was mine. Dorothy, passing by with a cup of tea, paused. "Ownership," she said, "changes how sound travels." The days filled with small markers of progress. Hazel corrected a classmate gently during a group project and didn't apologize for it. She volunteered to lead warm-ups at rehearsal. She laughed louder, took up space. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. My mother called again. This time she asked if she could attend the upcoming concert. "I'll ask Hazel," I said. Hazel listened quietly as I relayed the request. She didn't answer right away. She tightened her bow hair, loosened it again, then looked up. "Not this one," she said. "I want to play without thinking about who's watching." "That's enough of a reason," Dorothy said. I texted my mother back with a single sentence. "This one is just for Hazel." There was no reply. The concert arrived with rain. Not heavy, just persistent, blurring the streetlights into soft halos. Backstage, the air buzzed with nerves and rosin dust. Hazel sat with her violin between her knees, eyes closed, breathing in counts of 4. I watched from the doorway, careful not to interrupt whatever ritual she'd built. "You ready?" I whispered when she opened her eyes. She smiled. "I'm here." The conductor called them to places. Hazel walked on without looking back. I found Dorothy's hand and held it, steady as the lights dimmed. The music that night demanded patience, long phrases, exposed lines, moments of silence that asked the audience to wait. Hazel leaned into it, listening as much as she played, her bow confident and unafraid. She didn't play like someone asking permission. She played like someone answering a question she'd been carrying for years. Applause filled the hall, warm and sincere. Hazel stood with her section, flushed and smiling. Not the polite smile she used to wear, but the kind that came from inside. Afterward, she found us in the lobby, breathless with excitement. "Did you hear that entrance in the second movement?" she asked. "We did," Dorothy said. "You told the truth." On the drive home, Hazel was quiet. "I didn't feel small," she said finally, "even when it got hard." I nodded, letting the rain keep time against the windshield. A few days later, a letter arrived with the orchestra's return address. Hazel held it like it might bite. Inside was an invitation to a summer program. Longer hours, higher expectations, a chance to be surrounded by music for weeks instead of minutes. "It's far," Hazel said. "It is," Dorothy agreed, "and it's optional." Hazel looked at me. "What do you think?" I swallowed the reflex to decide for her. "What do you want?" She took a breath. "I want to try. I'm scared, but I want to try." Dorothy nodded. "Fear isn't a stop sign," she said. "It's information." That night, Hazel practiced late, working through passages she'd struggled with before. She stopped, corrected herself, and tried again without frustration. I watched from the hallway, realizing how far we'd come, from empty corners and whispered apologies to choices made out loud. When Hazel finished, she set her bow down and looked at me. "Whatever happens next," she said, I don't want to disappear again. I crossed the room and hugged her. You won't, I said. We won't let that happen. Outside, the rain eased. The house settled around us, calm and unbothered. Whatever came next, conversations, reckonings, choices, we were ready to meet it, standing up, instruments in hand, listening for the next note. The summer program started faster than I expected, like a door that didn't creak before opening. One day, Hazel was counting down rehearsals on the fridge, and the next, she was packing her case with careful precision, folding clothes the way she folded music, neatly, deliberately, with intention. I'm nervous, she admitted, tying her shoes the morning we left. That's allowed, I said. So is excitement. She smiled. I think I have both. The campus sat just outside the city. Old brick buildings softened by trees and wide paths worn smooth by decades of students pacing through the same hopes. Parents hovered at the edges with coffee cups and tight smiles. Hazel checked in on her own, shoulders squared, violin case steady against her side. She didn't look back when her group was called. The first week was hard. Hazel came home each night exhausted, words tumbling over one another as she described missed cues, demanding conductors, and the strange relief of being surrounded by people who cared as much as she did. They don't clap when you're good, she said one evening. They just nod. And you know that means something. Dorothy listened from her chair, hands folded. Respect doesn't shout, she said. It waits for you to hear it. Midweek, Hazel called me during a break. Mom? Yeah? I messed up today. Big time. My chest tightened. What happened? I rushed a passage. Everyone heard it. And then? I asked. She paused. Then we fixed it. And kept going. I smiled, alone in the kitchen. That sounds like progress. Across town, my parents' house sat empty. The playground remained, bright and untouched, a relic of a celebration that never quite landed. Monica posted fewer photos now. When she did, the comments were sparse. The noise had moved on. My mother tried again. She sent a message asking if Hazel wanted company at her end-of-program concert. I showed Hazel and waited. She read it carefully, then handed the phone back. I want to play without thinking about them, she said. Just this once. That's okay, I replied. Dorothy nodded. Boundaries don't need announcements. The concert arrived on a humid evening, the air thick with anticipation and the faint smell of rosine. Hazel sat among her peers, posture easy, face focused. I watched from the back row, my hands folded tight in my lap. The music filled the hall, layered, demanding, alive. Hazel played with a steadiness that felt earned, not borrowed. She listened, adjusted, became part of something larger without disappearing inside it. When it ended, applause washed over the room, honest and sustained. Hazel bowed with her section, eyes bright, smile unguarded. Afterward, she found me near the exit. I didn't disappear, she said breathless. No, I agreed. You didn't. On the drive home, she rested her head against the window, watching the city lights blur into color. I don't think I want to stop, she said softly. Stop what? Choosing myself? You don't have to, I said. A few days later, Dorothy called us into the living room. She held a folder, not legal papers this time, but plans, notes, possibilities. I won't always be here, she said gently, but what we've built doesn't depend on that. Hazel nodded, serious. I know. The phone buzzed once on the table. A message from my father. I'm glad she's doing well. No demands, no guilt, just a sentence. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. That night, Hazel practiced quietly, shaping a melody she'd been working on since the program ended. It wasn't assigned. It wasn't perfect. It was hers. The sound filled the house, settled into the walls, stayed. I leaned against the doorway and listened, thinking about everything that had shifted, not with shouting or spectacle, but with choice after choice made out loud. Some futures are taken, others are claimed. As Hazel played, steady and sure, I knew which one we were walking toward. The fall concert arrived without drama, which felt like its own kind of miracle. No rain, no frantic rushing, just a clear evening and a hall that smelled faintly of old wood and expectation. Hazel adjusted her dress in the mirror backstage, checked her strings, and took one steady breath. I watched from the doorway, resisting the urge to remind her of anything. She didn't need reminders anymore. Dorothy stood beside me, hands folded, posture relaxed. "This part," she said quietly, "is hers." The orchestra took their places. Hazel settled into her chair with a confidence that would have seemed impossible months ago. When the conductor raised his baton, the room stilled. The first notes emerged, measured, intentional, and Hazel leaned into the sound, listening as much as she played. She wasn't performing for approval, she was speaking. The music swelled, tightened, released. Hazel's bow moved with certainty, her phrasing honest and clear. I felt something loosen in my chest as I realized I wasn't bracing for anything to go wrong. I was simply present. Applause came at the end, warm and unforced. Hazel stood with her section, smiling, not the careful smile she used to practice, but the one that arrived without permission. She bowed once, then again, and walked off stage with her head high. Back in the hallway, she found me and Dorothy and laughed, breathless. "That felt right," she said. "It was," Dorothy replied. "You told the truth." We drove home in comfortable quiet. Hazel watched the lights slide past the window, fingers tapping a rhythm she'd been shaping all evening. "I think I know something now," she said. "What's that?" I asked. "I don't have to wait for people to give things back," she said slowly. "I can build forward." I nodded. "Yes, you can." At home, Hazel placed her violin in its corner and didn't stop there. She opened the case and played, softly for herself, a melody that wasn't assigned, wasn't polished, but felt complete. The house listened the way it always did now, without tension, without rules that shrank the sound. Later that night, Dorothy sat with us at the kitchen table. She slid a folder across, not heavy with documents, just notes and plans. "I'm putting everything in order," she said, "so no one has to guess later." Hazel looked at her. "I don't want to take anything from anyone," she said. Dorothy smiled. "You're not taking. You're continuing." The phone buzzed once. A message from my mother. "I hope the concert went well." No questions, no expectations, just a sentence. I didn't answer right away. I didn't have to. Some messages don't require responses to be complete. As the weeks passed, life didn't become perfect. There were awkward holidays, unfinished apologies, moments where old habits tried to return, but there was also music in the evenings, confidence in Hazel's step, and a house that knew who it was for. One afternoon, Hazel looked up from practice and said, "You know, some people don't realize what they're listening to until it stops." I thought about the empty corner where her violin had once been, about silence mistaken for agreement, about the moment someone finally chose to listen long enough to act. "Maybe," I said, "but the ones who stay usually want to hear the whole thing." She smiled and played on. And that was how it ended. Not with shouting or victory speeches, but with continuity. With sound filling a space that once felt borrowed. With a child who knew her worth and adults who had learned, finally, how to protect it. If you've stayed with this story to the end, you already understand why it mattered. Some stories fade when the noise dies down. Others keep going, quietly, steadily, because someone decided they were worth following all the way through. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this, you know where to stay.